into the unknown, into the unseen, the unexplainable, and the unbelievable. Join our strange journeys. Are you ready? George Tyron, Vice Admiral Tyron, had gone down in history for a bold and unsound maneuver that caused the collision of his ship, the HMS Victoria, and another, the HMS Camperdown, off the coast of Lebanon, killing 350 sailors and himself. As his ship was quickly sinking, Tyron exclaimed, there's a misprint there, Tyron exclaimed, "It's all my fault," thereby exonerating any other sailor or officer of the grave error. He drowned in the sea along with his men. At the same time, listen close, at the same time, thousands of miles away in London, his wife was giving a sumptuous party at their home for friends and the London elite. Tyron was seen by guests dressed in full uniform, descending the stairs, walking through some of his rooms, and then quickly exiting through a door and vanishing, even as he was dying in the Mediterranean. The next day, the guests that had witnessed the scene were utterly shocked when they learned of the Vice Admiral's death in the African coast, and none could offer an explanation.
That's tripped out.
Yeah, I mean, while his ship's going down in the Mediterranean, and people see him at the party.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And he's not even supposed to be in the country.
Exactly. This next one is kind of fun. Sir Frederick Carney Roche, the British MP. Andrew?
British MP Carn Roche was due to attend a parliamentary debate in 1906 when he came down with the flu and was bedridden for some time. No one expected to see him that evening, so when fellow parliamentarian Sir Gilbert Parker spotted him in the Parliament during the debate, he was at once well pleased and surprised. He sat next to Carn Roche and greeted him and said, "I hope you're feeling better." Seeing no reaction from his friend's face, Gilbert concentrated on the debate. When he next turned to look at Carn Roche, he found the seat empty. Gilbert searched for his friend in the lobby of the Parliament, but to no avail. However, other parliamentarians had also seen Carn Roche during the course of that evening, thus giving credence to Gilbert's claim. Carn Roche fully recovered, found out about the incident, and wrote a lengthy newspaper article jokingly explaining that his will to participate in the debate was so strong that his spirit was forced to attend on his behalf. Luckily for Carn Roche, he lived on for a few more years.
Well, he really wanted to be at a political debate. Wow.
Talk about being there in spirit, you know? Yeah, when people say, I'll be there in spirit.
Okay, this next one's a weird one. And I've watched several videos on this one. This is probably the most popular doppelganger story out there today. Dagny had found it, and then I found it on a couple of different YouTube videos, and then found a write-up on it. In 1845, a 32-year-old teacher called Emily Segay started working at the French language private girls' school, Pension van Nuelk, in Latvia. Although she was a talented and a well-liked teacher, she soon became the focus of rumor and speculation. The problem was there was not only one Miss Segay teaching at the school. There were two. Sagay's double first disappeared in her classroom. As she wrote on the blackboard, a second Miss Sagay, appeared in front of the class, mimicking the teacher's movements. One evening, as Sagay ate in the dining hall, it appeared again, mirroring her actions once more. From that day on, the sightings became more frequent and more frightening. One hot summer day in 1846, the entire student body of 42 girls sat in the hall in the classroom having a sewing lesson. As they worked, Sagay picked flowers in the school's garden. Now, when the sewing teacher left the room to speak to someone else, Sagay's double suddenly appeared at the front of the room, staring straight at the frightened children. Sagay never saw the phantom. She only knew of its presence. Now, they said that when her double or doppelganger appeared in the classroom, the kids could look out the window and see her picking flowers. But they noticed that at the time the double appeared out in the garden, she just kind of wilted, like she got tired all of a sudden. Now, one of the children approached the double, and it gave no response as to the presence of the child. And the little girl reached out to touch her, and she said it was like pushing through weeds or something, and she couldn't really touch her hand. As some accounts say, it just passed right through. Now, witnesses said the color would drain from her face, and she would be overcome with fatigue. Her movements would become listless whenever the apparition was near. Now, Sagay was eventually fired from her job as her double terrified everybody at the school too much. Now, that came from the Vice.com article as well, the time when you're most likely to see your doppelganger. Now, who wants to read? Wait. Of all the pictures I find, this one kept coming up for Emily Sagay for some reason. I don't know why.
It almost sounds like she was experiencing like some sort of like astro projection, more than having a doppelganger, that she was like, dreaming to the fullest. So
right. I think that's, astral projection is one of the things we're going to talk about in our suppositions. So that's a possibility, yeah. All right, who wants to do Abraham Lincoln?
I won't read it, but I can tell you exactly what occurs. Lincoln would begin telling the story about his doppelganger about 2 weeks before his death. He said that he had gone to rest in another room. He had been laying down on a couch, and when he got up, he actually looked in the mirror, and instead of just seeing his face, there was a second face behind his. He would describe it to friends as being very skull-like, like a skeleton. He also wrote the same thing in his diaries. Basically, what happens is that it scares Mary. Of course, Mary Todd Lincoln had already had lots of experience with death. They were known for doing seances inside the White House at the time, and were very much part of the spiritualist movement of that time. What happens is, though, at about 2 weeks later, he will actually be killed in Ford's Theater, which brings about that death shortly after the beginning of his second term.
Right. And that's probably the most famous person's doppelganger story. All right, what started this show, our first episode was Personnel Paranormal. And Tim shared a story where he was ghost hunting.
A lollipop.
A lollipop. All right.
She's excited. She just found a candy cane, cherry candy cane.
Oh, boy. Now, but his story is what is the basis for this show. So I wanted him to go back and retell that story for us. And then I got a similar story after that. And then we're going to hear from Andrea and Dagny some of their personal stories.
No, we talk about this I do tell the story on the downtown. It's actually what we call Superstitions and Urban Legends tours. Usually we only do it on the 13th of any month. If we've got a Friday the 13th in there, we do that tour. So usually it's a tour that
That's
we only
cool.
do about once or twice a year. It doesn't occur very often. Some years ago, my wife and I were involved in a paranormal investigation group here in the state of Kansas as leaders. Um, we were invited to explore the new Topeka Cemetery. Let's make this very clear. It's called the New Topeka Cemetery. It was established in 1857. It's still called the New Topeka Cemetery, even though
Brand
it's
new.
not the original cemetery. What happens is we went out there, and as we were investigating, prior to us getting out there, we made it very clear. Everybody's got a partner. Stay with your partner. Don't wander off by yourself. My wife and her partner were busy visiting with the spirit that was sitting next to a tree that told them that that tree had been planted by his mother about 60 years before. Topeka's records are so good; they can tell you who planted the trees and when they were
Wow.
planted. I mean, the cemetery records are very complete. We didn't know that at the time. My partner was Eric. Eric was at the time our videographer and photographer. Eric took pictures of everything, and I just happened to be playing with a K2 meter for the very first time. I'm not big into tech, but I was standing there, and all of a sudden it spikes out completely in the middle of the
Wow.
cemetery when it shouldn't have been. I took the thing apart, disconnected everything, thought, well, that's kind of weird. Put it all back together. I moved over about 4 or 5 feet, and it spiked again. And so I went, okay, I'm going to play with this again. Maybe something's wrong with this thing. I moved a few feet, and it spiked again. And I said, hey, Eric, I think something wants us to follow it. Eric nodded his head. We then began a trek through this entire Topeka Cemetery, and it took us about an hour and a half. This We went all the way down to where Curtis Chapman or Charles Curtis is buried. Charles Curtis was the vice president under Grover Cleveland from
Huh.
the as the United States vice president, which was about a mile from where we started. It is a massive cemetery.
Wow.
We came back up. We went through what they call Mausoleum Row, turned back around, and we were at the place called where the first Archbishop of Kansas was buried. When my wife pulled up next to me in a car, and she says, "Hey, you said nobody wanders off by themselves," and I said, "Nobody. I'm not by myself. Eric is right here with me." And I'd been checking, and I kept seeing him behind me taking photos and always looking in a different direction than what I was facing, and I didn't think anything of it. That was pretty normal for the two of us. Um, and she says, "No, Eric is in the car with me." Now I have to understand, I'm 6'5" now. I was 6'6". I've shrunk a little bit since then. And we had a Chevy Cavalier. So in order for me to look into the vehicle, I had to duck down. I looked down, and Eric is sitting in the passenger seat, and I turned around to look, and whatever had followed me through the entire cemetery was no longer there. I mean, this is like
Wow.
an hour and a half of us being out there. Well,
Wow.
apparently by myself being there. 1 minute. Somebody's trying to get my attention. So, but yeah, it was a really long period. So I started really investigating exactly what happened and what was out there. And that's when I found out that it was very likely a doppelganger that was out there. There is a researcher out there. Her name was Lisa Griff. She got married here a few weeks ago. We talked about having as a guest for this show, and unfortunately,
Yeah.
something came up so that she couldn't make it.
Right.
But this is one of the ones that she's investigated in the past as well.
Wow.
That they actually have. Her team has a picture of the same member standing about 10 feet apart with
Oh my
other people
gosh.
in between them, and this thing is looking away from the camera again.
Wow.
But what I found was
Love
in
to
the
have a
Topeka.
picture.
Oh, no kidding! And so I was hoping her book was going to be here by today because I'm getting a free copy of the book just because that story is in the book. And so I was hoping to get a picture of what she saw so that I could have it on
Yeah.
here, and I wasn't able to do so yet.
Wow.
But Topeka has in the Shawnee County Library what they call the Topeka Room, and it's
Uh-huh.
a large file of everything that goes on in Kansas, news articles and all kinds of things that people look for the most. And as I was researching this, I actually found a newspaper article that somebody else had found from a Baton Rouge, Louisiana newspaper from 1824. where a French fur trader had come through Kansas, and he said he had been to a place called Topeka, Tapeka. It probably is Topeka, but it's probably the same place. He said he was about a mile south of the river, which is about where the new cemetery is located, when he saw something that was in the shape of a deer that shifted into the shape of a man and then shifted back down into the fox and disappeared into the tall grass that was around him. Um,
Wow.
it's been seen multiple times since then over the years. So there's lots of people that have seen this. The Ka Indians or Kanza Indians that actually had Topeka as a trading post beginning in 1822. They used to call it Chabe, or changing spirit.
Huh. All right. Cool. We're going to talk about that in our suppositions too. Some Indian folklore.
Right. Now, one of the reasons that I saved the new Topeka Cemetery, let's make this very clear. My tour takes place in the downtown Topeka. Downtown Topeka in 1846, the downtown area was called the Prairie Home Cemetery. There are 8 blocks downtown that was the original town cemetery. In
Wow.
1857 to 1867, they moved it 5 blocks away to what we now call the new Topeka Cemetery, even though it's the oldest cemetery in Topeka.
Oh, wow. They did a similar thing here in Mobile. I know exactly what you're talking about. Which downtown Mobile, they didn't get all the bodies.
They found 28 bodies in the last 50 years that they missed. So,
Yeah,
they keep finding them.
Yeah, anytime they do new construction in downtown Mobile in that area, they find
Right.
bones. Now that led to another story I found. It was off of the Halloween Dash website. This was written by a contributor on there named Alex. He said there's a defiled cemetery in the outskirts of Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, the city I was born in. People who can't afford to pay funerary services often bury their loved ones there. In Mexico, there's no such thing as medical aid for low-income workers. People that come from out of town are not used to the ever-changing weather, and as a consequence, many children die in the winter and end up buried in the old cemetery. When I was about 10 years old, 4 older friends and I decided to check it out. We walked for hours, and when we finally arrived, it was almost dark. The air was getting very heavy, and we heard a strange noise from an old rotted tree. As we got near it, the tree started shaking. We all got really scared and ran. Later on, we found out that it was one of our friends just playing a prank on us. We were laughing when suddenly the old gravekeeper showed up. He said, "Boys, I know you're all just here to have fun and fool around, but please understand that horrible things happen here. I live in that house over there." It's about 100 feet from the cemetery. "And every night, if those high school punks come and drink and make their mess, weird things begin to happen. Last time they were here, loud voices, and then someone was knocking on my door around 2 a.m. I thought it was one of those punks, but no one was there. And I'm very tired, and I really would like to sleep tonight, so if you have no business here, please leave." We felt bad for the poor old guy and left. We never returned to that place until I was 17. I was with my high school friends in a truck, and we were looking for the old cemetery. And after 10 years, the place had really changed, and we were having trouble finding it. The trail was wet and muddy, and there were so many of us that the truck got stuck in the mud. When we got out of the truck, we soon found out that we were inside the cemetery. My friend left the truck in neutral so we could push it, when suddenly the truck began moving by itself. After we saw that, we were so scared that we just got in the truck and drove off. When we finally decided to stop, we noticed the truck was marked with tiny foot and handprints all over. Now, does that sound familiar? Just a side note, they've got one here close by. I've got to find out where it is again, but the Gravity Hills, where these are all around the world. You place your car in neutral on the hill, and it'll roll up the hill. And when it stops, when you check the vehicle, there will be tiny handprints all over the car. That's happened time and time again. All right, after they got back in the truck, they found those handprints all over it. The gravekeeper showed up and said, I remember you. You don't understand what is going on, do you? The spirits will chase you for a long time. I really didn't pay much attention to what he said until I later learned that there hadn't been any gravekeeper there for years. I got really freaked out when my friends started telling me that I looked different. They said they would run into me and I would have a disturbing and evil look in my eyes. The weird part is that I was never even at the place and time they would tell me they saw me. One of my friends said he chased me all the way into a dead-end alley and that I would just disappear without a trace. Even my girlfriend said she would sometimes see me near the house, dressed in black with a disturbing glare, when I was actually out somewhere drinking with someone else. My sister says that sometimes she hears me when I get home and watches me open the door and go into the living room with the light turned off. She would see me lay down on the sofa from across the hall, and suddenly I would begin ripping my clothes off like some wild animal. When she turns the light on, there's no one there. Hours later, I would arrive home, leave my keys on the table, and go to my room. All of this happens as if someone or something was imitating me like a mimic. I thought that was, just the fact that it happened in a cemetery, but we don't know the end of his story. But something attached itself to him and started mimicking him. Now, Andrea had said that she had a story. Dagny's working on the picture.
Sorry.
What's yours?
I do have a story. I have decided that I tend to have a story with almost every topic that we end up covering. So I'm either one of the world's largest BSers. So I'm glad I actually have a witness this time. It was my mother. But I tried to get her to come on the show and she said no. So Mom, if you're watching, you're supposed to be here. So this is a few years back. My mom had come over to visit and we were just hanging out in the living room, sitting in front of my fireplace. And my husband, John, was being a super sweetheart and he was putting laundry away. But I didn't know that, and neither did my mom. The kids are running around. We have 3 children. They were a little bit younger at the time, so they were really running around. And we see John go to our basement door, unlatch the safety latch that's at the top of the door, open the door, turn on the basement light, proceed to walk down the stairs and shut the door behind him. We didn't think anything about it. His office is downstairs, so he goes down there often. Maybe about 2 minutes later, he comes from the far hallway on the other side of our living room carrying laundry.
Wow.
And my mom and I looked at each other, looked at him, looked at each other, looked at him, and we were like, how'd you do that? Weren't you in the basement? He said, I haven't gone down to the basement. Yes, you did. We saw you go down to the basement.
Oh, my
And
God.
I mean, it really unnerved us. I make it sound lighthearted. It shocked us. We were really surprised to see that. And, we kind of, the kids were like, what'd you see? Nothing, so we whispered about it later.
So did you go to the basement?
No, I've seen that movie. No, but I'm just saying my basement is, for an unfinished basement, and it's finished, unfinished. It's kind of creepy down there. It's always kind of had it's always, anybody who comes and visits friends, we used to have a pool table down there.
Yeah.
They didn't like being down in the basement.
Oh, wow.
So,
Well, what did John think about it? I mean, it was his doppelganger.
he found it a little unnerving, but he has gotten used to weird things happening in this house.
Yeah.
This has been a very strange house. We've lived here for 16 years and we've had all kinds of weird things happen here. So he was just like, great, another thing. So,
well, chuck another one up there. Yeah.
pretty much.
Why is it always
Well,
the basement, though?
I know. Why is it the basement? Because we don't have an attic. That's why.
I mean, everybody's always scared of the basement.
They are. I don't have a problem with them. I always think it's a fun place to explore when we go to different places.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But we're just strange.
Well, that reminded me, I meant to ask Tim a question about Eric.
Sure.
What was Eric's response? How did he handle it?
Eric didn't really understand how he could be in two places at once, let alone, how this thing, had mimicked him enough that it was like, well, it was me. Yeah. Because there were times that there was even a flash behind me, like he was setting off his camera. And I'm like,
Wow.
this is crazy, because I would see the flash, you could, because it's dark out, it's the middle of the night.
Wow.
And I guess I think what bothered the two of us more, and three of us, including my wife, more, was that knowing that we were in that cemetery less than 2 weeks after somebody had been murdered in it. That was the third murder. There were 5 total in 6 years in that cemetery. Probably made it even more disturbing to know that, here was something else that was out there exploring with us.
Yeah.
That probably shouldn't be.
Right. That's creepy. Wow. Yeah. Well, Dagny, what was your story?
I actually, I was reading all these stories. I was researching online and stuff, and about doppelgangers. I've heard about them all my life. It didn't even dawn on me at all until I was reading Alex's story, the one in Mexico. That I was like, oh yeah, I remembered that one day when we lived in Seattle, my mom came home from shopping. She was grocery shopping, and I was supposed to be out with my grandma. So I went out with my grandma that day, and she came back from grocery shopping, and she saw me through the kitchen window. She was like, "Oh, good, there's someone to help me bring groceries in." And so she came inside. She walked in with all her bags and stuff, went into the kitchen with me, and said, "Go out and get some more groceries." And then she, I guess, walked away, and my sisters completed bringing in all the groceries and everything. Well, about an hour later, I came through the front door, and she's like, "Well, wait a second, weren't you upstairs?" Or she's like, and I was like, "I just got home." She's like, "Who helped me with the groceries?" I said, "I guess my sisters, you know?" And she goes, "No, I talked to you in the kitchen. I even saw you before I got into the kitchen." And I was like,
wow.
And I, at the time and throughout my life, I never even paid attention to that until now. I was like, oh yeah. Because I was doing my own thing. I was like, okay, Mom. Yeah, you saw
it. So she was more freaked out by it than you were.
I didn't even care. I didn't pay any attention to her. I went, oh, okay, and went back to doing my thing.
All right. Well, Andrea saw John's, her husband's. Dagny's mother saw her, and Tim saw his friends. I hope that doesn't mean anything because there's some superstitions surrounding doppelgangers that seeing your doppelganger could be an omen of your death. This is the most widely known myth, even though we've got 3 examples right here that hopefully it doesn't look like that's the case. But I think if the emphasis is on if you see your own doppelganger. If you see someone else's, it may not be that bad. But doppelgangers give malicious advice. They've been known to, as they're acting like the original, then they pull pranks or, like in that book. What was it about the Battle of Troy? What was it?
Helen?
Yeah, Helen, where she actually, by just doing something foolish, what was it? Let's see. In misleading Paris, they helped prevent a war. I mean, she was like, let's do this way and stopped them from fighting. One of the earliest references to this idea, it says it's where the twins Ahura and Mazda and Angra Mainyu were co-eternal representatives of good and evil. Now, this could be like, remember in the cartoons, you got an evil angel and a devil. It could be something like that. Yeah, if someone else sees your doppelganger, it means you might be very sick. And now, I found a statement from the site director at the old Cahaba ghost town that's in our area. It says that if someone else saw your doppelganger, it could mean that you've been very ill. Whoops. We lost Andrea. She had said she might not be able to stay the whole time. So, well, if she comes back, she'll get to finish out the show with us. If not, see ya. Glad you were here. Your doppelganger's a ghostly double that lived before you. Or it's your spirit double. Or it's your evil double. Oh, there she is. She's back.
Sorry.
It could be your evil double from the underworld. Let's see. It's very likely that spirits that mimic the appearance of a person. Many people believe that these spirits have ill intentions and wish to do harm to the person they are mimicking, be it physically, emotionally, or by ruining their reputation. And if that's the case, the offending spirit would likely be some form of a demon. All right. Even the portrait of a doppelganger can be a bad omen. That's they're saying this is a myth. This is from the website. 8 superstitions about doppelgangers that will keep you up at night from the website Bustle. It's written by Jessica Booth. Or it could be the sign of an alternate universe. All right, as we go to shut down, I've got a whole list of things that it might be, suppositions, thoughts. And we're just going to go through these real quick because we've had some amazing stories. And we talked about bilocation, which is an alleged psychic or miraculous ability wherein an individual or object is located or appears to be located in 2 distinct places at a time. Or a dead ringer, which is an exact duplicate, 100% duplicate. It's derived from the 19th century horse racing slang for a horse presented under false name and pedigree. Or what about astral projection? Astral projection. I mean, we've already mentioned a couple of these. What do y'all think? Astral projection is a term used in esotericism to describe an intentional out-of-body experience that assumes the existence of the soul or conscience.
I know that
traveling. Go ahead.
Scientists have recently taken an actual photograph of an atom being in 2 places at the same time. The same atom.
Oh, I heard about that.
And it's hard to even comprehend it. You look at the picture and you're like, okay, there's 2 dots. But the thing is that those 2 dots are the same thing appearing in 2 places. And it's hard for our minds to even comprehend looking at this picture.
Yeah, it makes me wonder how they know.
How did they get that atom to do that?
Same here.
Right? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, how did they this could easily explain Bigfoot now. So, like some theories behind it.
That
Like,
could explain a lot of phenomenon.
it's crazy.
If maybe it comes down to different dimensions that we're only aware of it sometimes and not others. I mean,
well, that's one of the things. That's one of the things I have on the list is this multiverse crossover where there's a vortex and things are coming through. We're not going to cover all of these, but a couple I want to cover before we close is one I came across, and this is not to discount anybody's story. It's just a supposition. It's called autoscopic phenomenon. It's
I found this
psychic,
really cool.
psychic illusory visual experiences consisting of the perception of the image of one's own body or face within a space, either from an internal point of view, as in the mirror, or from an external point of view. Descriptions based on phenomenological criteria distinguish 6 types of autoscopic experiences. That's the autoscopic hallucination, and they didn't go on to delineate these and define them. But anyway, there's also the feeling of a presence, an out-of-body experience. This, they're saying that it's a mental thing or psychic thing. I'm not saying that to put it down, but it's saying it that it's your brain projecting this.
I would say yes to maybe some of them, but I don't know how my mom and I projected John going down to the basement.
You both saw the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, we saw him at the same time, and we heard him. Not only did we heard him go down there, like open and close the door. So
What I found the most interesting about that site was that's the National Institute of Health saying that this really happens, whether it's hallucinatory or not. They're admitting that it happens.
Yes, they do. And it leads to another one called the Capgras delusion, where that's a psychiatric disorder where you basically hallucinate your friends or spouse or parent or other close family member. You're hallucinating that they've been replaced by an imposter, that you're seeing a doppelganger, you're not seeing the real person. I mean, it doesn't happen that often. And they are able to treat it. But the last 2 things I want to talk about before we close out is it a changeling or a skinwalker? A changeling, historically referred to, and this refers back to our fairy show as well, a human-like creature found in folklore and folk religion throughout Europe. A changeling was believed to be a fairy child that had been left in place of a human child stolen by the fairies. And that's refers back to what Tim was talking about earlier with the guy, what was it, from Baton Rouge that was in Topeka.
Yeah, he's a French fur trader that had come through.
Yeah. And skinwalkers. Now, the only reason I bring up skinwalker for one reason. I mean, if you've done any research into skinwalkers, they take animal form. They're I think Andrea brought this up on one show last season, where they get so involved in the evil side of witchcraft that the evil just takes them over, but they can change into forms of animals. But one thing I ran across in researching this says they might also possess living animals or people and walk around in their bodies by locking eyes with them.
Correct.
So have we seen a skinwalker and thought it was a doppelganger?
See, and now the Navajo tradition, though, is that it is a spirit that is taking. It's not a witch. It's a spirit that exists. If you're not familiar with Navajo tradition, if someone dies in the home, they cut a 4-foot by 4-foot hole in the northeast corner wall to let the spirit out of the house.
Wow.
And it doesn't matter how new that house is, but they're going to make sure the spirit leaves. And so sometimes they believe that spirit can become a skinwalker that is possessing somebody else, and can cause what they call a ghost sickness.
Oh, weird.
Well, we've covered a lot of possibilities today. Is it a ghost taking our form? Is it a demonic spirit? Is it a skinwalker? Is it a changeling? Is it a delusion? I mean, but the fact remains that throughout history, and we see here recently, I say recently, and in this group here, people have been seen that were not there, and their doppelganger was seen. Oh, final thoughts, everybody. Let's start with Christine.
Had to unmic myself or unmute myself. I've heard about doppelgangers before, not personally seen one myself. I think it'd be kind of cool to see one.
Yes, it would.
Personal opinion.
Maybe.
But yeah, maybe depending on the situation. Lynn, final thoughts.
That we had from the Sanger Theater of the little girl in the mirror. Could
Oh, I
that
forgot
be
about
kind
that.
of like what Lincoln saw? Could it? Because we
Yeah.
just automatically thought that there was an apparition or something else there. Could it have been a doppelganger?
Cool.
Yeah, I'm glad you remembered that. I'd forgot all about it. I put it in here several days ago and I forgot about it. But yeah, this was given to me by a personal friend that says this was taken at the Sanger Theater in Mobile.
Whoa.
So yeah, it is kind of a creepy picture. So could be a doppelganger. Dagny, final thoughts.
You want to see my picture?
Yes.
Oh. It's a person on one side of the world and a person on the other side of the world looking in mirrors, and they're not seeing a reflection, but they're existing on both sides.
That is cool.
That's nice.
That's awesome.
Hey, thanks, guys.
All right. Well, we still want to get a good picture of it, and then we're going to put it on a T-shirt, but we're also going to give away the originals. We're going to do some kind of drawing. I got to figure out how to do that. But then we're going to raffle do a drawing and give it away. Andrea, final thoughts. Oh, wait, we didn't get Dagny's final thought. We just got her picture.
There we go. Hold on. I'm trying, guys. I'm not. It's like backwards in the video. Like, it's kind of weird how the video works backwards from what you're moving, like a mirror.
Yeah, mirror
Like a
image.
doppelganger.
Yeah. Well, Dagny, what are your final thoughts on doppelgangers?
I think I need to think more about it because I kind of thought nothing of it until we started researching it.
Yeah. All right, Andrea.
I don't know. I mean, I know what I saw, There's also been rumors that there's a girl that's in the Beaver Creek area that looks like me, and people will walk right up going, yeah, she's rude. She doesn't say hi. I would at least say hi. But she also colors her hair the same. Like when I was blonde, she was blonde.
Yeah.
When I went back to my natural brunette color, she just so happened to as well. And people have really mistaken her for me. I don't know who she is. I've not seen her. So, and then I also kind of wonder, I didn't immediately think when I saw John, or I know my mom didn't either. When we saw John Doppelganger, we didn't think he's going to die soon. So I also kind of wonder if a little bit of that is kind of, just kind of coincidental when people say, oh, when you see your doppelganger, you're going to die. Maybe it's because that seed's been planted in there,
Could be.
But I believe, sure, it sounds,
All right, Tim, final thoughts?
I think before my incident, I probably would not have believed that this thing is out there. I think it's a spirit, though, that has enough power that it can do what it chooses to.
Right.
What it is, who knows? Is it a human or inhuman spirit? I don't know. I know that there's been enough sightings of it in the Topeka area that they'll probably be seeing it 100 years from now.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, doppelgangers is something that's been portrayed in movies and TV as long as there's been movies and TV. I mean, Star Trek had the episode where Jim Kirk got split into two people, and you got the good one and the evil one, and then they had to figure out how to fuse them back together. I mean, that's some thought of it, that it's, say, your evil self manifesting over here. But I think bottom line, in the three cases that Dagny, Andrea, and Tim had, these were, I believe, mimicking spirits. It's a paranormal thing. It's not a natural thing. We probably all have a twin on the planet. God, I feel sorry for mine, but
My sister's got one that lives around here somewhere.
yeah, that's the word. But in the situations that these three have talked about, I don't think that was a physical thing. I think it was paranormal. I think it was spiritual. And I don't necessarily think it was evil, because none of them got that foreboding. And luckily, thankfully, the myth didn't come true of seeing,
We're still alive.
yes, you're still alive. And you didn't get sick either, because everybody saw somebody else's. And they say if you see your own, that's an omen of death. But hopefully, we're going to leave you with this. We hope you do not see your doppelganger. Hey, guys, we'll be back in 2 weeks. Two
Okay.
weeks with Lay of the Land. We'll be talking about ley lines. Hope you can make it. See you then. Thanks for being here with us.
See
Goodbye.
you.